Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be reviewing Starrily's Chronometry collection. This 6-piece set was created to celebrate some of history's most renowned timepieces, and I don't know about you, but I feel like that is just the coolest and most unexpected theme for a nail polish collection. As always, I will save some more of my thoughts after the several comparisons that I have, but for now, let's just get into the swatches. The first shade we have is Sundial, and this one is described as a champagne microfleck metallic polish. If you're familiar with Starrily, you basically have seen this formula before, and I know this color definitely looks really familiar, but don't worry, I will be showing comparisons soon enough. But yeah, the formula on this one was really nice. I ended up doing a little bit of a thinner coat than I normally do, so you might see some nail line here, but I don't think it is going to be a one coater. You definitely are going to want at least two. I got really great coverage on two, even though my nails are a little bit longer, so I don't think you would need a third, but it just depends on your application. But yeah, this color is gorgeous. The next shade we have is Astrolabe, and this one is just described as a deep blue nail polish. I definitely would say this is like a sapphire royal blue metallic, and I got this one basically opaque in one coat. I was super impressed with the formula on this one. It was just so buttery smooth, super opaque as you saw. It provided really even coverage, and obviously the color alone is just so stunning. The next shade we have is Clepsydra, and this is a sheer light blue crelly base with a blue shimmer. So I was kind of surprised to see this formula from Starrily, and at first I was like, okay, this is a choice. But a Clepsydra is basically a water clock, so you just measure the flow of water from one vessel to another, and that's how you track the passage of time. So this definitely makes sense for the inspiration, which I really love. It did have a fantastic formula though that I thought was very even coverage, so you could wear this in 1, 2, or 3 coats depending on your preference. I personally love the squishy look that you get in 2 coats, but I'm showing it in 3 just to see how much coverage I get. And there's still a little hint of nail line. This is definitely not going to build up to full opacity. Next we have possibly the coolest one from the collection. This is Atomic Clock, and it's described as a blue shimmer with a silver magnetic effect. So you can definitely see both of those elements right here. That blue shimmer is just so vibrant, and it has that silver magnetic shimmer. But I don't know what I would call the base color. I think I would say it's like a very, very light kind of gray maybe. On the first coat, it's hard to see for sure, but once you build it up in 2 or 3 coats, especially if you're doing a cat eye effect, you do see a little bit more of like a gray base, but it definitely is very sheer. So if you are doing a cat eye but you don't like nail line, I would highly recommend doing a blurring base coat or layering this over a white or a light gray cream. I feel like it's been a minute since I've shown a magnetic on my channel, and my preference is doing a velvet effect, and here is the technique I use. I just hold the magnet next to my nail while I'm painting on a somewhat thick layer, and then I'll pull the magnet away from my nail, and you can see in a more jelly-based magnetic like this one, the magnetic shimmer is super reactive. You can also move the magnet to the other side of your nail if you want, and here is a comparison between a velvet effect and no effect, and there's just so much more dimension when you velvetize it. The next magnetic polish we have is Quartz Crystal, and this one is described as a pink base with a silver magnetic effect. Now, when I look at this shade, I would not call it pink, but I would say it's like a pink leaning purple. No surprise though, it is definitely one of my top favorites from this collection. I just love the color so much. I was also pleasantly surprised to see just how berry leaning the base color was, because this has a super cool, almost lavender kind of magnetic shimmer, which I think is just so gorgeous. And again, this one has a bit of a jelly base, so I had a little bit of a bald spot near the tip of my nail that I feel like was a little too obvious even after the second coat, at least doing a cat eye effect. So I did end up doing a 3rd coat, and you can see it just deepens the color so much more. And again, here is a comparison between doing a velvet effect and no effect, and this one velvetizes beautifully. But I will say it looks a lot more purple here than pink. And rounding out the collection, we have Hourglass, and this is described as a darkened base with purple shimmer and a silver magnetic effect. I think I would say that this has either a black base or a really, really dark gray, and this one had a super opaque formula where I basically got this fully opaque in just one coat. But again, if you do thinner coats, you might need a second one. The only downside I will say is that the thicker formula unfortunately makes it a bit harder to velvetize. You can see here it's just not as dynamic as the previous two jelly-based magnetics. So I think this looks best cat eye. And here is the Chronometry collection worn as a Skittle. I'm wearing 2 coats of each and have the magnetics magnetized with the cat eye effect. This is roughly after about 12 hours of wear time, so they are a little bit diffused. I think it's a lot more noticeable in more lower lighting. It just looks really blown out, but under more direct lighting, you still see that sort of cat eye line. It's just not as crisp as when you first magnetize, but Hourglass is definitely the most subtle, and again, Quartz Crystal is looking a lot more purple than it is pink, but they still look cool. Now getting into comparisons, we're starting with Sundial, and I wanted to first show this next to 3.14K gold from the Pi Day collection earlier this year. I would say it's the closest to this one, but less orangey. And I also obviously have to show this next to AU, which is just their classic yellowy gold. So these 3 basically have the same formula, they are just slightly different color-wise. I think that 3.14K gold is picking up a little bit more similar to Sundial than it actually is. In real life, I see it as like a lot more orangey. I thought I could show this next to a couple of Holo Taco shades, starting with Bottle Service, but that one is a little bit too yellowy gold. Not to mention it also has these holographic flakies, so a totally different look. And then I thought it might be more similar to Zyler Cat Eye from last year's birthday trio. It kind of is a little bit more similar in color, but Zyler's a little too light and almost has a smoother metallic effect. So I think a closer shade is ILNP's Fawn from last year's Fairy Forest collection. This one actually is a magnetic, but if you're looking at it just unmagnetized in the bottle, I feel like it has a very similar visual effect. And of course, I also had to compare it to one of my favorite metallics, Zoya Soleil, which is like this beautiful coppery kind of color, but it's a bit brighter than Sundial is. So you can see the shimmer in both Fawn and Soleil almost lean a bit more coppery, and it's a little bit more yellowy gold in Sundial. So they're not exact dupes by any means, but I also don't think you need all 3. Then for Astrolabe, I wanted to quickly show this next to ILNP's Deep Dive from their somewhat recent Cabana collection. That was the darkest blue in that set, but you can see it is nowhere near as dark as Astrolabe. So I thought maybe Mooncat's House of Hades would be a little bit more similar, and it kind of is, but I think House of Hades is a lot more vibrant. Not to mention it's a totally different finish. So I thought that Olivav's Supernova was going to be the closest polish that I have, and it kind of is in a way where they basically are the same kind of finish, but just obviously different colors. The only other dark blue from Olivav that's kind of shimmery like Astrolabe is Reflection from their recent winter collection, but that one's just way too dark and more of a shimmer instead of a metallic. So you can see on the nail that these 3 definitely don't compare. I really thought that I had something more similar to this, but I don't know, maybe it's like a Zoya or OPI shade that I just don't have in my collection. Then for Clepsydra, I was immediately reminded of Mooncat's Sabertooth, which is a blue Crelly with a blue shimmer. But as you can see, these are totally different, where Sabertooth is a lot more of a whitened blue base with a much finer blue shimmer as well. So Clepsydra almost has like a blue-gray kind of undertone, but I think if you were to see it in the sun, it looks a lot brighter. And then I thought to show it next to Mooncat's Mercury in Retrograde, which came out in the past lunar sale a few months ago. I think these have a little bit more of a similar base, but Retrograde is a little bit lighter, and it also is a magnetic that has a pink shimmer, so the colors are kind of off, where I wouldn't call these dupes. So since that was a magnetic, I thought maybe it would be similar to Atomic Clock, but as you can see, these are totally different colors. Atomic Clock really has more of that gray kind of base, and again, a blue shimmer, so definitely not dupes. I also knew I had to show this next to Starry's Moonflower, which is another beautiful magnetic, but the base in that one is a little bit lighter, not exactly white, but like a light gray, and the shimmer is pink instead of blue, so these are definitely not dupes. I think a closer color comparison is actually actually Mooncat's Heavenmetal from their Band of Misfits collection last year. These have a really similar strong blue shimmer. The bases are also a bit similar, but Mooncat's is definitely a bit lighter. The only difference is that Heavenmetal isn't a magnetic polish. So here I'm showing Atomic Clock unmagnetized, and you can see how similar they are already. So I thought to add Cirque Chemistry, which is just a silver magnetic topper over Heavenmetal, to see if I could kind of recreate it, but the shimmer just does not compare. I think if I had done a layer of Holotaco's Freezer Burn before doing Chemistry, it would be a lot more similar. And the last comparison that I have for this one is Beaux Rêves We Are All Made of Stars, which was actually a Polish Pickup exclusive shade. And I was so surprised to see how similar these were. The main difference is that this Beaux Rêves shade has these iridescent flakies, but they have like the exact same blue shimmer and almost the same kind of base color. It's just a little bit lighter or maybe just more sheer in Beaux Rêves. So here's how they look next to each other, both unmagnetized and then with the cat eye effect. And I am just so floored by this because I thought this Beaux Rêves was like the most unique magnetic I've ever seen, and the Starrily is super close. So I think it would be a great alternative, especially if you have Holotaco's Sonic Unicorn skin. You could easily recreate this Beaux Rêves shade. Moving on to Quartz Crystal, I wanted to quickly show this next to Starry's Aphrodite because it's the only other kind of pink Starly that I have. And you can see these are definitely not dupes. There is no comparison. For actual closer color comparisons, the first shade that I thought of was ILNP's Sugar Plum from the Winter Wonderland collection a few years ago. That one I thought had the more similar base color, but as you can see, this has more of a true warmer pink kind of shimmer. And then I thought it would also be incredibly similar to Cirque's Clairvoyant, which I had picked up in a D-stash a few months ago. It was one of their pastel magnetic polishes, and it kind of has a pretty similar icy lavender magnetic shimmer. So here I have two coats of each unmagnetized, and you can definitely see that Quartz Crystal and Clairvoyant look like they could be dupes. I think I would go as far as saying that they have the same exact magnetic shimmer, but then once you actually magnetize them and you see the base colors, you can see that they aren't exact dupes. Sugar Plum is more of a reddy plum kind of color, while Clairvoyant is a true purple, and Quartz Crystal has a little bit of that pinky purple color, but it's a great alternative to Clairvoyant if you don't have that one. And lastly, for Hourglass, I thought that this might be similar to Cirque's Oracle, which was from that same pastel magnetic collection. But as you can see, it has more of a blue-toned purple shimmer compared to the pinky purple in Starrily. I also thought that maybe Mooncat's Ghost Ship was going to be similar, but as you can see, these are totally different shades. Definitely not dupes, but I knew there was a Mooncat closer to this one. I thought it was Illusionist at first because it has a really deep base color, but the shimmer is more of this fiery kind of red-orange shade, so it's really not that similar at all. And then I remembered Malevolent, which is, I think, the closest that I have to a dupe. It basically has a purple shimmer magnetic pigment in a black base, and it also has these holographic glitters, which isn't present in Starrily. So here I did one coat to show you the difference in their coverage, where Mooncat is a bit more sheer. It's just not as fully opaque as Hourglass, but once you do a second coat, it definitely builds up to opacity. And while they do look kind of similar here where they're unmagnetized, they really turn into two completely different polishes once you do a cat eye effect, because again, the magnetic shimmer in Mooncat is purple, while the magnetic shimmer in Starrily is silver. It just happens to also have a purple shimmer outside of that. So definitely very similar vibes, but not dupes. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Starry's Chronometry collection. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on this release and what you think of the individual polishes and their finishes, but also just the theme in general. Overall, I thought these were really beautiful colors with stunning formulas that I'm happy to report about, considering my last review of their neons wasn't the best. I also just really love this homage to how we keep track of time. Again, it is just so unexpected unexpected for a nail polish collection, but I feel like these shades are just such great tributes to them. The color story is definitely so unique but very fitting, and it's not a summer collection by any means. Like realistically, I'm not gonna be reaching for these like anytime soon, but I still really love the idea of them and think they're just so cool regardless. So make sure to let me know your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!